So you have access to GNAT Pro. Now what? In this video, we'll go over some basics and take some first steps in using this flexible and powerful development suite. We've downloaded GNAT Pro and GPS 17.2 using GNAT Tracker. We'll start by installing GPS. Double-clicking the GPS icon will start the installation. Notice that the checkbox to install for all users is grayed out. Now, if there are multiple users on your system and you want GPS to be installed for everyone, exit the installer, right-click on your installer, and select Run as Administrator. And now you can see that checkbox is checked. We'll hit Next. And generally, we're going to use defaults for everything. We'll use C, GPS for your destination folder, hit Next. GNAT Pro will be the Start menu folder, hit Next. And we'll hit Install. Now with the GPS installation finished, let's move on to the GNAT Pro compiler installation. So let's install for all users here as well. Right-click on GNAT Pro and choose Run as Administrator. Now we could install for all users and we'll go with defaults just like we did for GPS. We often get questions about the order of installation. Generally, the order of installation is really not that important. Once all is said and done, the order of the directories on your search path could be different, but really, unless you have multiple versions of the same software installed, there won't be any functional difference based on the order that you choose to install this software. Another question we get often is about whether our tools can be installed in the same directory. We recommend using separate installation directories to minimize interference between each product installation. This also has the advantage of making it easier to manage multiple installations and multiple product versions. Once you're done installing the tools, there are a couple of ways to proceed. Let's invoke GPS from the Start menu. When you invoke GPS, GPS will present you with a welcome dialog with several choices. You could create a new project from a template. You could start with the default project in a directory. You could create a new project with a wizard, or you could open an existing project. Now here, every line mentions the word project, but what is a project? A GNAT project allows you to handle groups of files in a coordinated way. Within a project, you could adjust various things. There are many declarations. For instance, what languages you're using. In this case, we're using C, and we're using Ada. You could declare where to find input sources, where to deposit output files, and what switches to use for the programs that operate on your files. You could declare the kinds of outputs that you want this project to produce. For instance, should we produce an executable file, a library, or just a bunch of object files? This determines the nature of your project. Now, this all sounds very complicated, but it all comes together in a thing we call a GNAT Project file, also called a GPR file. The GNAT Project file contains a description of the project. As you can see, it's just a text file that looks very much like Ada. The GPR file, along with all the stuff that it references, altogether can be seen as being a GNAT project. So GPS is asking, do you want to create a new project using a canned template or a wizard? Or do you want to open an existing project? Or do you want to use what we call a default project? A default project is a project with a minimal configuration. Source files, object files, and executables will all go into the same one directory that you specify in this text entry field. Let's create a self-contained project with some minimal organization. We'll put sources and objects in separate directories, and we'll provide the name of a main procedure, which will correspond with the name of an executable. The easiest way to do this is to use a template to create a new project. There are a handful of templates to choose from, and we'll select the basic simple project template for our project. Now, this template requires you to supply it with the name of your project, the name of your main procedure, and a location for your project. According to tradition, for a first project, we will tackle a Hello World program. I'll call this project My Project. We can leave the name of the main procedure as is, but we will put our project in a folder on our desktop called Hello. The GPS interface appears, loaded with a project that was just created. In the area on the left, you can see the project, outline, and scenario views. There's a messages view downstairs, where GPS will show things like messages from the compiler during compilation. And the big area in the middle is your workspace. The Help menu is an excellent place to go for both beginning and advanced users. The Welcome menu item will bring up the Welcome to GPS pane. Selecting Contents will bring up a web browser with several documents available for your perusal, including the GPS User's Guide and the GPS tutorial. The GPS submenu is another way to get at these documents, and the other submenus here allow you to bring up plenty of reference information, including the Ada Reference Manual and the GNAT Pro User's Guide. The GNAT Runtime submenu is special. Selecting any item within it will bring up the Ada spec file from the Ada runtime in the GPS editor. For instance, let's bring up the spec for ada.txt.io. In the project view on the left, you can see a graphical representation of our Hello project, including the source and object directories that are in it. We can take a look at the GPR file that describes this project by right-clicking on the project in the project view, then going to Project, Edit Source File. The contents of this project file are pretty simple. It's even easy enough to type this in manually. You can see declarations for source directories, an object directory, and main files. A GNAT project can be modified by directly typing into this file using the GPS editor. For instance, by default, the object directory is where executable files are normally saved. But to direct the system to instead deposit the executable in the same directory as the project file, you could add for execdir use dot. Then after any manual edit of the project file, it's important to refresh GPS's understanding of that project file. You could use the menu item Project, Reload to accomplish this. Another way of modifying that project file is to right-click on it in the project view, then go to Project, Properties. This will bring up a graphical interface for making adjustments to the most common settings. For instance, we can look under Build, Switches, Ada to set compilation switches. You'll find commonly used switches in the display. If you select any checkbox, for instance the one for debug information, the -G option shows up in the text entry downstairs. You could also type directly into the text entry, and the corresponding checkboxes will automatically check and uncheck themselves, like they are doing with overflow checking with the -GNAT-O option here. If you'd like to enter a switch that doesn't have a graphical checkbox, the text entry is the best place to do that. Once we're done using this Project Properties dialog, we can click OK and then save the project by right-clicking on it and going to Project, Save Project. GPS will detect that the hello.gpr source file has been modified, and it'll offer to refresh the copy in the editor. Here are the changes that we've made to the compiler switch settings using the graphical interface. According to the template we used, we'll find the sources for our main program in the source directory. Expanding this source directory reveals the main.adb file. Double-clicking on main.adb brings up the file in a code editor. As you can see, the template has already done some work for us. It's created this nice dummy main procedure for us to populate. I'll enter in a Hello World program now. Now that we have the project set up and the sources entered, we can compile our program. Let's right-click on the project in the project view and go to Build, Build Main. In the GPS messages window below, you'll see the messages from the build system, and you'll see that this compilation completed successfully. Now, will it run? Let's right-click on the project and drill down through Run, Run Main. GPS will run your freshly built executable with the output by default going to the Run view down below. And there's our Hello World text. Rebuilding, rerunning, and cleaning your project is pretty straightforward. There are actually several ways to execute these commands. You can use the right-click contextual menu. You could use the top-level menu. You could use the toolbar icons. Or you could use hotkeys to perform these actions. Cleaning the project is not strictly necessary, but let's do it anyway. We'll go to Build, Clean, Clean All. Next, we'll modify this source to output a slightly different message. We'll say Hello Ada 2012. We'll recompile. And rerun. And there's our new message.